If you're on the NFL Twitter streets, and many of you are, you know and recognize this name, Theo Ash joins us from the Pro Football Network and also the Stay Hot Pod. Theo, how we doing, my man?
Doing well. Excited to talk some desert football today.
Well, I woke up, I think, earlier this week, opened up the Twitter app, the X app, whatever anybody wants to call it, and I saw you breaking down, analyzing some Cardinals film. And I said, all right, there's from a national perspective, somebody taking a look at this team here in the desert. What are your initial thoughts, obviously taking from 23 film and maybe kind of applying it towards the 2024 season?
Yeah, so I was looking at games specifically after Kyler came back, and that was exciting because you got good quarterback play. I think that Kyler, when he is in the game, may not have been at the heights that he was at like back in 2020, but he's been banged up. And I think when he came back, he did an admirable job operating more in structure under Drew Petzing, whereas Cliff Kingsbury, I think, kind of emphasized a more freewheeling approach. And I think Kyler did a nice job operating that offense, checking to the right runs, doing emphasizing his strengths. Like they threw it to Trey McBride a lot, like he wasn't afraid to do that. And I think that there were some promising things there on offense.
Yeah, you know what? We have to check ourselves on a daily basis because we do get kind of excited. Feels like there's a budding embarrassment of riches here as far as the playmakers go, and also the offensive line. I think is in a better spot than it's been in a long time, especially during the Cliff year. It was a disaster. But when I look at this offense, Theo, I mean, I see that. I see Kyler Murray playing within the infrastructure of the offense, whether it's the play calling, whether it's the personnel, something that he hasn't necessarily had, and he doesn't have to put on that cape and play superhero ball any longer. When you look at it with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr., with James Conner coming off of 5 yards per carry season, 1,000 yards on the ground, Michael Wilson emerging as a third-round pick, Greg Dortch getting an opportunity as the starting slot receiver, and Trey McBride, I mean, is it wrong for us to be excited about this offense? Where should we kind of temper expectations?
I don't think it's wrong at all. I think they averaged 22.4 points per game when Kyler came back. That would have ranked 14th in the league. And that's a pretty good mark to be at for an offense that kind of lacked a boundary target the entire season. Now you've added that. Kyler is going to be less locked into the middle of the field with a guy like that on the boundary, whereas last year he was kind of ignoring deep down the sideline, it felt like, and he's not as strong throwing it down the middle. So it'll be good to spread out the offense, and it could bring out, the best in the other players. Like now Greg Dortch doesn't have to catch hole shots. He can, move to the slot full time. That could be good, So I like how Marvin Harrison Jr. completes this unit. It feels like he's the exact type of guy that they were missing.
Love talking ball with our guy Theo Ash. Follow him on Twitter at Theo Ash NFL. When you look at kind of the hierarchy of weapons, how would you kind of rank it? Because with the addition of Marv and then the guys kind of coming back for this Cardinals offense, how would you kind of rank how they should be fed?
Well, I think Marv has got to be number one. He's a number one receiver. That's usually how great teams are built, is giving a guy like that 150 targets a season. He's that good. He's that polished. He knows what he's doing. I don't have any real concerns about his ability to translate pretty instantly. So I feel like he's got to get the most targets. And then after the season McBride had, I would say that you have to give him the ball plenty as well. I think tight end has a learning curve. He didn't do much his rookie year, but it felt like last season was a bit of a true breakout. Now, will he have the totals? Because last year he was the number one guy, and now that'll be Marvin Harrison. I don't know, but he's great after the catch. He's super strong at the catch point. I think maybe, I know Kyler talked about how he's still kind of developing the feel for the game, the feel for zone coverage, is like Travis Kelce has or something like that. But he's got so many gifts that I think you'd want him to be second in the hierarchy. And then, I don't know, between Dortch and Wilson, I think both of those guys have a lot of potential. I think Dortch had a bit more proven impact with Kyler, and obviously Kyler has talked him up this offseason. But Michael Wilson is talented as well. So maybe I'll go Dortch Wilson for now. But I could see that shifting. And I think those are all good starters, or they could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough not to get borderline giddy about it. It's a fun group to think about. Any of the Cardinals, before we shift to the other side of the football, that you just like to tune in and watch? Is there any under the radar guys that you like from this group that may not necessarily get enough love nationally?
Yeah, I love James Conner. I mean, I think that he flew under the radar last year. I mean, he averaged 4 yards an attempt basically every single game. The consistency was amazing. He can break tackles. Apparently, he's a great locker room guy. They rave about his leadership. I think that people want to see Trey Benson and just see the explosiveness and put him as that starting running back. But it would not surprise me if Connor's a little tough to beat out with how good he is and how good he played last year, even though he's not, the biggest home run threat.
Right. I mean, he was there as far as explosive plays go last year, and that was an element that I don't think anybody expected. He was a steady guy. He was great around the goal line and punching it in for touchdowns. But as far as him and racking up the explosive runs like he did, and aging like a fine wine like he did, and having his first 1,000-yard rushing season at 28. It was pretty crazy, but I agree with you. Like, people want to kind of already have him pass the baton to Trey Benson, where he's, James Conner's beloved within this organization, especially at the top with Jonathan Gannon. Like, they're not just going to gift this to Trey Benson, even though they're excited about the third rounder out of Florida State. But it's a nice to have an in-house successor. It feels like good organizations do that, don't they, Theo?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that Trey Benson's a talented player, a good get in the third round, but it doesn't mean that you have to play him right away. It's good to have depth, and when you're whoever their second string is, whether Benson or Benson is so good that he passes Conner, I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't anticipate that. But whoever your second back is going to be, it's going to be good. And there are injuries, and they have two complementary styles, and yeah, I'd be very excited about that backfield.
We started this interview with the good news. It was like, do you want the good news first or the bad news first? And we decided to defer the bad news to the back half of this. We talked off air about this defense. What's the best case scenario do you see in year 2 under Nick Rallis and Jonathan Gannon on the defensive side of the football?
Man, defense is so volatile. It feels like it's a bit hard to pin down exactly where teams are going to finish. But when you look at the Cardinals defense last year, it was pretty rough. I think they were 31st in points allowed per game, tons of rushing yards, the most in the league per game there, the second highest completion percentage allowed against them. When I watched their tape, it was a lot of things going wrong, and a lot of youth, no feel for the routes from the corners on where people were about to go. So they were always kind of breaking a half step late, it felt like. And maybe with a year to grow, the defense just eliminates those mental mistakes. But when I look at the Cardinals roster on paper right now, the only for sure guy that I see on their defense is Budda Baker. Maybe the rookies make a huge impact. I liked the rookie class, but there's just not enough big additions where I'm like, okay, it's all going to be fixed this next time around.
Right. I mean, a ton of question marks. You talk about all the yards they gave up on the ground last year, and it was a product of practice squad level defensive line. I mean, it was probably the worst position group in all the league last year. Now, they tried to raise the floor as far as the talent goes in that room. They had Justin Jones from Chicago, give him $30 million, Bilal Nichols from Vegas. Not, one of the two highly coveted guys, but guys that, at least you have NFL caliber guys on that unit, and then you supplement it a little bit with the addition of Darius Robinson. It does seem like a massive improvement, and it really had only one direction to go from last season.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think they raised the floor. They won't be starting, hopefully, too many undrafted free agents. But what's the ceiling,
Right.
They added free agents, but there wasn't a big splash, I guess. Yeah, Darius Robinson, first round pick. I like him, especially against the run. But man, Gannon only rushes 3 guys a lot of the time. They like to drop people back. As a rookie, is he going to be providing them enough juice where they raise out of the basement to some huge degree?
Well, where's he going to come from? I mean, we talk about the changes on the defensive line, the pass rush, the outside linebacker core. It's kind of the status quo. They had, only a 5th rounder out of Clemson, who's, a guy that was in school for a long time and not that productive in Xavier Thomas. There's some heavy expectations for a second-year guy in BJ Ojulari, and then another kind of, I guess you can say, second-year guy playing the position in Zaven Collins to produce there. I mean, you see it in any other way?
Yeah, they're gonna have to get a big improvement from the core that's already there. That's what they bet on. I could see it. I mean, they're young, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, hopefully some production comes from some, places that people weren't expecting as far as the Cardinals go on defense. Anybody in the secondary, you mentioned the safety play, like Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker, probably the most proven commodities there. But then you look on the outside, they add Sean Murphy Bunting. They had Max Melton in the second round in a Rutgers. I think a lot of people like his competitive level, and then obviously just the athleticism that you look at. His draft profile looks good. He competed at Rutgers in the Big Ten. One of his best performances was against Marv, his new teammate. What do you like about maybe potentially on the outside of as far as the secondary goes?
Yeah, I like how they have guys who will really fly around. I mean, Budda Baker is still that guy. First of all, he's the guy I'm most excited about. There is just no one who pursues like him still. He had a lot of fires to put out last year, and I think that he did an admirable job trying to get as many places as possible and making some unreal tackles. So he's someone I'm excited about. And Max Melton, who you just outlined, is somebody to be excited about. He is a playmaker. He blocked a ton of punts at Rutgers. He will fly downhill and hit you for a cornerback. So I'm excited to see that aspect of their secondary. And that's something that Gannon really emphasizes. He likes to play back and come forward with abandon. And they've got a bunch of guys who can do that.
Are you willing to make a prediction as far as this Cardinals team goes in 2024 here in mid-July?
So I think they could go 8-9. I think they could hover around 500. I think that their offense looks promising enough where I'm willing to say they'll be in the hunt, because the top offenses are usually those teams. But, well, the defense will improve a little bit in Gannon's second year. It would be hard not to. I still think that kind of cancels out the offense, and maybe around 500 somewhere. So I'll go 8-9.
It's a bit of a gauntlet, too, as far as the division goes. I mean,
it
you're
is
still dealing with some heavyweights.
It's a tough pull.
Always appreciate
It's a tough pull.
Yeah. Got to do this again, Theo. Make sure you're following on Twitter at Theo Ash NFL. You're reading his works, checking out his content at the Pro Football Network, and, of course, the Stay Hot Pod. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.